How's everyone doing? It's great to see you all tonight. I think we can all agree that mental health is one of the largest crises of our generation. I wouldn't be exaggerating by saying that all of us in this room, at some point in our lives, have struggled or know somebody that has struggled with their mental health. I also wouldn't be exaggerating by saying that many of us are likely struggling with our mental health currently. Why is it that so many of us struggle with depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues? At times when we know we have so much, why is it that sometimes we feel trapped in darkness without a hope of feeling better? What causes so many of us to feel this way, and is there any way we can help ourselves? To answer this, I'd like to introduce Dr. Albert Mensah. Dr. Mensah is the co-founder of Mensah Medical and Mensah Research Institute. His work focuses on naturally treating the biochemical imbalances that often manifest in patients as mental or psychological disorders such as ADD, ADHD, autism, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, and several others. These imbalances may also make patients more susceptible to anxiety, depression, and other internal disruption. In his presentation today, Dr. Mensah will discuss the many stresses faced by today's college student and outline strategies for treating biochemistry that can help students better cope with these stresses. He will provide a general overview of biochemical imbalance and the power and effectiveness of nutrient therapy in treating that imbalance. He will point out that nutrient deficiencies or overloads most often lead to anxiety, depression, and other cognitive or psychological difficulties. He will explore the unfair and negative stigma that comes with questions of mental health and demonstrates how students and all patients can better cope with stress, anxiety, depression, and can find their way to biochemical and thus cognitive balance. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Albert Mensah.
Greetings, Northwestern University. Oh, sorry, this is Purdue. Yes. In all fairness, I have to share with you who I am and my background, where I come from, and all that fun sort of stuff. Before I do that, I want to thank the brothers of Sigma Chi. Where are you people? Stand up, all you guys. Okay. Wonderful. So if this presentation is bad, you know who to blame. Right here, this group. Parsa, thank you very much, and Miriam Tafreshi, thank you very much as well. So a little bit about my background, yes. I am traditionally what's considered to be a family practice doctor. As a family practice physician, we kind of, as my friends would say, we do it from the womb to the tomb. We are responsible for about 85% of most specialties, which is everything from pediatrics to delivering babies to obstetrics and gynecology to psychiatry, you name it, including minor surgery, we do it. But more importantly, I have to tell you guys, I'm a big skeptic. I don't believe much of anything anyone tells me. Never have. I require quadruple studies. I require proof in clinical practice. I require everything. And so when people first told me about this world of, what do they call it, nutrients, I said, oh, come on, give me a break. All right, that stuff doesn't work. It's hooey. That's what we were taught in med school. Well, I took a chance because a really close friend of mine back in med school, who's also my partner now, told me about this field and said, you gotta see what they're doing at this amazing institution. So I took a chance. I decided, hey, I'll give it a whirl. In the worst case scenario, I could impress them with my brilliance. Because back in med school, I was an ace neuroscience student. I TA'd my classmates and got paid to do it. I TA'd other institutions like physician's assistants, physiotherapists, all sorts of individuals on how to navigate your way through the human brain. That was pretty hot stuff, if I do say so myself. Until I got to this institution, and this little Irish fellow about this high named Dr. William Walsh met me. We talked for a little bit, and I started going, Then there was a world-class psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Robert DeVito. And Dr. DeVito and I sat and talked for 45 minutes about everything except medicine. In the span of just a couple short hours, That massive ego that walked into that building was smaller than the size of half of the tip of a pinhead. I was truly humbled. And I said, either this stuff is the most amazing thing that nobody's ever heard of, or it's the biggest hooey on the planet. So I figured, hey, you know, I could take a chance on this or not. But guys, here's the deal. See, I was trying to marry up my sweetheart, okay, and I didn't have a job at that time. Okay, then I got this great opportunity elsewhere. I was gonna be retired in 8 years. Fast forward, that was 15 years ago, okay? And they're gonna pay me a whole lot of money. And these people, I wasn't even interviewing for a job with them, right? So before I left, I said, thank you very much, I'm humbled, walked out, got in the car, 10 minutes later I got a job offer. I said, hey, I wasn't interviewing for a job. And they said, no, but we think you'd be a good fit here. I said, well, I'm not so sure because I don't believe half of what you're telling me. And they said, why don't you give it a shot? I said, okay, how much are you gonna pay me? She told me. The executive director told me, and I said, is there another zero attached to that? Because that's not a whole lot of money. I decided I would take a risk, and ever since then, this is where I ended up. Further in background, I went to medical school at Finch University, School of Medical Sciences. I went to undergrad at Northwestern University. I know you guys have never heard of that, especially those of you who follow football, right? Congratulations, by the way, on your win, okay? We grant you that. Good for you. Bad for us, but what can we say? Every dog has their day, right? Went to an all-boys Catholic high school. Anybody here go to a same-sex high school? That still happens. How did it work out for you? It's great. You appreciate college, don't you? In a co-ed environment. There you go. Now, there's my brother. Okay, wonderful. So today we're going to talk about something that none of you can identify with. That's stress. Any of you here in college? None of you know what the heck stress is, obviously, right? Mental health, I'm not going to ask anyone who's got any mental health issues. I actually don't like using that term mental health because it really doesn't accurately describe what's going on in the system. There's nothing wrong, really, for most people with their mental. What the heck is a mental anyway? You've got a brain, you've got a mind, and people assume the problems with your mind, but that's not entirely accurate. The reality is that the brain sits there as a beautiful organ system. And in that organ, there's a lot of activity, but it goes beyond the brain. There's something that works in there we call the mind that's really kind of dependent on the brain as well. Now, for those of you who are going, what the heck is this guy talking about? Let me put it to you in a different way. Those of you who own cars, anyone here have a car on campus? Oh, a lot of you guys have cars on campus, okay. So Parsa has a car here on campus. I'm not gonna ask you what you drive. But I'm pretty sure his fraternity brothers know what that car is, right guys? So when you see his car, what do you say? You say that's Parsa's car, or do you say that's Parsa driving? Speak up, guys, this is gonna be interactive. I'm sorry, if any of you are trying to hide from me, it's not gonna work, because I'm gonna come down there later on, okay? So you can either speak now, or I'm coming down. They say Parsa. There's Parsa, right? So Parsa gets in his car, and now he and his car are one. Driving across campus, knocking on that horn, pressing people. But what happens if Parsa's car is not working? He's not going anywhere, he's on foot. He has the luxury of being able to step out of his car. But if your brain is not functioning properly, unless you transition to the great beyond, you don't have capacity to step out of that car, known as the human brain. So while it's dysfunctional, like your car going clutter, clutter, bang, bang, clutter, clutter, bang, bang, because it's not working properly, making a lot of noise, embarrassing folks, well, problems with the human brain are similar. And then most people get labeled with something we call a mental health issue. Let's get started. So back in 2008, my partner, Dr. Judith Bowman, and I founded Mensah Medical, clinic located in a suburb of Chicago known as Warrenville. We have outreach clinics in Arizona, California, Florida, Maryland, and Michigan. We actually take our crew of our team from the clinic, and we go out to these other places and we see patients there. We have over 50,000 patients that we've treated. We treat what are considered mental and psychological concerns that result from biochemical imbalances. We literally train doctors around the world to do what it is that we do, because that stuff works. The Mensah Research Institute is an outgrowth of Mensah Medical. We established it formally in 2016. Our executive director, Mr. DJ Wells, is here with us today. Mr. Wells, would you like to wave? Thank you very much. Stand up there. Take a curtsy, Mr. Wells. Okay. Our director of research is Mr. AJ Russo. We conduct and support research on targeted nutrient therapy and other natural treatment protocols. We're continuing decades of research that started with the great Carl Pfeiffer, MD, PhD, and continued by Dr. William Walsh. We identify pathways to provide targeted nutrient therapy to underserved populations, underserved being basically most of the galaxy. Because if you are involved in what is considered to be a mental health challenge, and you're being given pharmaceutical agents, drugs, for example, you're being underserved. Now, why is that? Because they're not looking for the root cause. In medicine, we were taught we don't know what causes that stuff. Anxiety? Well, maybe somebody's dog died. Depression? Well, somebody got a bad rap in life. But what about people who have lived a glorious life, have no reason to complain, and yet still suffer with these symptoms? Okay? There's an underlying cause, and in medicine, we were not taught to look for that. But thanks to these guys who came before us, well, now we understand we can actually look for the causes, find many of the key causes, correct them, and you don't have to live with anxiety, and you don't have to live with depression. That's medicine of the future today. Our clinical experience, we have over 40,000 individuals tested and treated for depression and anxiety, 10,000 behavior disorders, 5,600 with ADHD or ADD, 7,500 with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, 8,500 with autism. Now, let me really share some key points with you. When I say treated, I mean they don't have that stuff anymore. Now, some of you have got to be sitting back and saying, this guy's full of it. There's no treatment for this. I'm glad you're thinking that, because that's exactly what I thought before I got educated. When I first went to that original center, there were plenty of people who supposedly had schizophrenia. And I saw them after they were treated. And I said, what are you in for? And they said, schizophrenia. I said, well, tell me about yourself. You working? So, yeah, I got a job now. I said, really? He said, you married? Oh, yeah, I got a wife and kids now. I said, wait a minute, that doesn't happen with schizophrenia. He said, yeah, I know. Cool, isn't it? Autism. How many of you have heard that autism is untreatable? That's right. How many of you know it's not the case? You will now. You will now. There's a systematic approach to diagnosing and treating and successfully reversing autism that not just me, quite a few doctors around the world understand how to do this. And we teach doctors globally how to do this. And you know what? We don't use drugs. Anyone here like cars? You know, I talk about cars periodically. Young man in the blue shirt. What's your favorite car? Lamborghini. Beautiful.
Or 1970 Chevelle.
Good for you. He's old school, too. 1970 Chevelle, huh? You work on cars? You know. Who here works on cars? Anyone? This young man. So if your car breaks down, sir, what do? Put duct tape around the entire engine? Around the car? It's not going to work? Why not? Duct tape, you're right. Duct tape can't fix everything. If you've got a mechanical problem, you've got to get under the hood, right? And find out where the problem is and correct it. That's what we do. We get inside the human brain, the human system, find out what is problematic, and correct it. Now back to our Lamborghini guy. You got a Lamborghini on your hands. No offense to anyone driving this particular car, but you're going to fix that Lamborghini with Hyundai parts?
Okay, heck no, right? Now, somebody would love to take that Hyundai and put in Lamborghini parts, right? But the fact is you can't do it the other way around, but that's what we do every day when we take drugs because we've got anxiety or depression, or we take drugs because we are anxious. The key here is that you've got to go and find the very same parts that are problematic to fix a system as opposed to trying to put very expensive duct tape around it, okay? Oops, backwards. Let's talk about common concerns and considerations on campus. Anxiety, depression, procrastination. This is a fun one because, you know, first of all, I tell you, I love you guys, I really do, because you remind me of my youth. Once upon a time, I was young, and I went to school too, and I was one of the biggest procrastinators on the planet. I know none of you guys know this concept. You got a midterm coming up, it's a week before, you say, I should get started studying, and you're like, oh, but the game is on, so, oh no, I gotta clean my room, I gotta go grocery shopping, I gotta do all these other things. Fraternity party coming up. Time goes on. 2 days before the exam, maybe we decide to open up the book, and then we find ourselves pulling an all-nighter. Anyone ever heard of that before? Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. I remember it well. But what happens? Procrastination actually contributes to the anxiety. Okay? Then you get kind of stressed over it. Now, that's a different form of anxiety than what we're really going to be talking about, but that's part of the issue. Procrastination, lethargy, stress created by personal expectations. Oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm gonna land that job at a certain company. If I don't perform this well and get these kind of grades, then I've gotta get this project done and blah, 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 blah. We have high expectations of ourselves. Otherwise, we would not be here at Purdue University, would we, right? You don't come in saying, gosh, I'm a schmuck, right? I'm a lowlife. I'm terrible. I'm not smart. Who here thinks they're not smart? Oh, humble young man. Very good. We're not going to talk about parental pressure. My son, Jonathan Edward Smythe III, comes from a long line of creative engineers. None of us got anything less than a PhD, and I expect my son to take over the company or my daughter to take over the company. As soon as she graduates, we're going to start her off at the executive level, and she'll perform at quadruple A expectations. Anyone here got that going on? If you do, I'd like to meet your dad, and can I work for him? Is that no?
I'm still trying to get a job with him.
You're still trying. Now, those are some high expectations. No pressure there, right? Finances. Okay, I'm not even going to ask you guys about that. You're in college, and it's like, for many of you, pizza's probably the most creative thing you're going to have. On average, that's quick, inexpensive, and so forth. Finances are oftentimes an issue. Time management. Look what you've got to juggle. You've got to juggle the academic work, the research work, the friends work, the family work, the internet. All your likes on the cell phone thing. You know, that's one thing we didn't have. I'm going to sound like your parents, forgive me, but I am old enough to be your dad here. We didn't have that stuff, so we didn't go around always rooted, you know, in texting and tweeting and liking and disliking and unliking and befriending and unfriending and following people on stuff. If somebody said, hey, are you following me? That meant that you're in trouble because they've got a gun or a rifle or something there to shoot you. That's a totally different creature in a conversation. Time management, food, relationships, social engagements, and then internal disruption. What is internal disruption? Internal disruption is that construct where for whatever reason something is just not right. And you don't quite know why or what it is, but every single day you don't feel like you're operating on all 4 cylinders or 6 cylinders. We feel your pain. We are once collegiates. We're not here to tell you we can eliminate the demands of college life and advanced study at a selective university like Purdue. We want to help you understand how unbalanced chemistry can actually impact how well you cope with common college problems. We want you to move past the stigma of mental health. It's just bad biochemistry, okay? We want to identify issues that many of you face and provide coping strategies and a pathway to help. Here's the bottom line. You don't have to live this way. You don't have to live with these challenges and you don't have to live with the idea of what may seem to be unmanageable stress. First, I want to share with you very quickly, the brain is a biochemical factory. Given the proper supply of building blocks and cofactors, the brain creates biochemical processes that are essential, absolutely key for normal brain function. Serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and other neurotransmitters are made in the brain. The raw materials for this process involve vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. Based upon genetics and epigenetics, individuals are biochemically unique. Does anyone know what epigenetics is? All right. Young lady, what is your major? What are you studying? I'm in nursing. You're in nursing. Beautiful. They're teaching you epigenetics in nursing?
No, I learned it a while ago.
You learned, I learned it a while ago. Okay. Well, can you share with us what in less than a dissertation is epigenetics?
So like if you're born with certain genetic material throughout your life, you might have certain factors, like environmental factors that influence your genetics, so it might change over time.
Did you guys catch that? That was a beautiful synopsis. Thank you very much. Give her a hand. There are doctors who cannot explain that as well as she just did. That was awesome. Absolutely. You've got a genetic blueprint. It sits there. But the environment and environmental influences and trauma and all sorts of things can actually change how your genes show themselves, or don't for that matter. So some genes should be active and they're not, because environmentally something may have caused that gene to shut down. By the same token, other genes are supposed to be quiet. Environmentally, something may have happened to actually activate those genes. Does anyone here know, I'm going to give you, here's an example. We've got 6 genes. Every single person in this room, every single person throughout history has had 6 genes present that if one of those genes gets turned on right now, you drop dead. Did any of you know that? They're called lethal genes. And it's true. One of those things gets turned on, for no reason, you just drop dead. But we're all here. So epigenetically, what that means is that we are built to survive, but even more so, we're actually built to thrive. And if you're not thriving, then you're just surviving. And what fun is that? So dealing with epigenetics is part of what we do. In other words, we deal with molecular medicine. It's because of the environment and environmental differences, individuals are biochemically unique. A genetic or epigenetic imbalance in a nutrient can alter brain levels of key neurotransmitters. And when that happens, that can result in abnormal brain chemistry. So by understanding science-based biochemical biotypes, advanced nutrient therapy aims to heal the brain and correct biochemical imbalances. There are certain nutrient deficiencies that can cause bad or poor brain function. Zinc imbalances, something called methionine, an amino acid, folic acid, vitamin B6 and 12, niacinamide, antioxidants like Se stands for selenium, GSH is glutathione, chromium, etc. There are certain overloads. When you have too much of some of these elements, problems can occur. Too much copper, folic acid, iron, methionine and SAMe, toxics like lead, mercury, cadmium, all sorts of wonderful things when you drink, when you have too much of them, can lead to problems. Let's talk about nutrient imbalances that alter neurotransmitter activity. There's certain imbalances that most people have who have these conditions: ADHD, behavior problems, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, autism, and schizophrenia. Too much copper, for example, can create a lot of these things. Low levels of what we call methyl molecules. Anyone here had your general chemistry? Are you guys made to do general chemistry here, like your first year? Okay. Young lady, what is methyl?
It's basically a carbon with 3 hydrogens on the end of something else.
Beautiful. What happens with methyl? What does methyl do?
From what I remember, it helps stabilize something, or helps like end the group. It's usually found on the end of the molecule.
Beautiful. That is correct. A carbon atom with 3 or 4 hydrogens, and that's exactly what we were taught. You know they didn't teach us that in med school? I learned more about methyl in college than I did in med school. But now we understand methyl has an even more powerful role. When it attaches to something else, it actually turns it on, or it turns it off. So methyl molecules, believe it or not, are the source of your existence, because if you don't have enough methyl, you got problems. It's the start-stop button of your Lamborghini, okay? If you keep the engine running, eventually you run out of gas. And that's what happens when you've got too much methyl. Too little methyl, you can't get stuff going, and it can't be in balance. That can create a lot of these disorders that we're talking about up here. Something called Pyrrole Disorder. Oh, we're gonna have fun with that one. I'll tell you about it later. Toxic metal overload, and then severe oxidative stress. Anyone know what oxidative stress is? None of you? How many engineers do we have in this room? Oh, now you're shy, right? Purdue, you're telling me in this whole room, one person's an engineer. I don't buy that. Okay, let's go with it. Oxidative stress is kind of like rust for a car. How many of you have seen those old trucks out there with big holes in them and the engine doesn't work and the chassis is all destroyed and all that kind of stuff? You've seen them, right? Rust. When you have a cell, a nucleus, a cytoplasm, and a cellular membrane, it too can undergo rust or oxidative stress. When that happens, your cells don't work too well. That can create problems. Let's talk about copper overload. When you've got too much copper in the system, you can have symptoms like impulsivity, hyperactivity, poor academic performance, temper tantrums, low self-esteem, high irritability, aggression or violence. Sleep issues. Many people can have a prior diagnosis of ADHD. People with focus and attention problems have a short attention span. Those folks can be in constant motion. Really important, very early in life, they've got what seems to be bad behavior in school. They can oftentimes have high anxiety, a history of physical assaults, and that's where I'm going to leave that piece. Let's bring this home a little bit. How many of you know what a mass murderer is? Now you're open, right? Your eyes are open now. Now you're feeling me. Okay. Many a mass murderer, many a sociopath, many a Hannibal Lecter have high levels of copper. You guys know that? Copper is a great conductor of electricity, right? Our engineers, we all agree there. Conducts heat, it conducts electricity. So now imagine if your system is overloaded with copper. Now what happens is that constantly your brain and different parts of your nervous system are constantly being stimulated like an electric prod. Impulsivity, agitation, anger. Wouldn't you be angry if somebody was constantly sticking you in the electric prod? That'd pretty well tick you off, right? Yeah, now imagine if you couldn't escape your own skin because of it. Okay, you're stuck that way. So people tend to act out. They lash out. Something I want to talk about to the ladies in the room. Young ladies in the room, can you raise your hands for me, please? Okay. Very good. I'm not going to ask you any personal questions, but I want to share with you that there's some very particular insight that we have specific to young ladies that males don't undergo, okay? The idea of estrogen dominance. Does anyone know what estrogen dominance is? Some of the guys are raising their hands. Okay, you're doing your homework or reading very interesting magazines, one or the other, all right? Estrogen dominance is when there's a great deal more estrogen than there is progesterone, hormones in the system. And in the old days of medicine, we used to say, well, the person with estrogen dominance is someone who has a lot of problems because their hormones are out of whack, and so we give you more medication to fix the problem, and this is how it is treated. We do not care the cause because we know there is no real cause because it's all about your hormones. And you say, well, doctor, gosh, I've got painful and erratic menstrual cycles. I've got internal rage and agitation. I have cyclical issues. Every month things just get worse before they get better. Or in my family, we've got a history of fibroid tumors, or we've got ovarian cysts or endometriosis, and a lot of times just suffer with a foggy brain. Well, you know what? Each and every single one of those things up there is associated with copper toxicity. And if you or a family member has any of these issues, it can be treated. You don't have to live your life that way. This is, once again, understanding what's going on in the system, not simply putting on duct tape to correct, supposedly correct, temporize some of the challenges we're experiencing. I put down there razor's edge at the very bottom, because many a young lady will feel as though they're always on edge. Family members will say, we're always tippy-toeing around that person because we don't know what's going to set them off. Has anyone ever heard that before? Has anyone ever said that about a family member before? All right? That's likely one of the things that's going on. You can see there are physical issues up there that have nothing to do with the mind or the brain. And that's because copper works in both the body as well as the brain and affects both systems. So it's kind of like being Sherlock Holmes. When you look at all the pieces to the puzzle, you can see where some of the troubles really start. Oh, methylation. We talked about methylation already, so we're going to pass that. We'll pass that. Overmethylation, though. I will talk to you about that a little bit. People who are overmethylated, remember, methyl is that activating carbon atom with 3 hydrogens. Turn stuff on, turn stuff off. What happens if you have too many of these methyl molecules in your system? In other words, your genes have said, hey, we're going to put out all this stuff, we're going to keep putting out more and more methyl, and we're not going to balance things out. Well, you can have high anxiety or panic. Nervous legs. Now, this is really interesting. I'm going to tell you not just nervous legs, but also nervous hands. Now, I don't know what school is like anymore, so you're going to have to educate me a little bit, but back in the old days, we actually went to a classroom, and you could see your colleagues, some of them sitting there flicking the little pens around with their little fingers like this, while they're just kind of sitting there looking normal from here on up. But then if you look at their legs, usually tapping their feet or doing something along those lines, or what that young lady is doing over there in the chair, swiveling it around. Sorry, I'm not telling on you, but I'm telling on you. A lot of times that's because there's hyperactivation of the system caused by having too much methyl. These individuals can be depressed. They can be involved in self-mutilation behaviors. That's pretty severe stuff. And they're not crazy, they're not loons. They just don't know that they have a biochemical imbalance. Oftentimes, they can have very adverse reactions to SSRIs. Anyone who's ever taken a medication like Paxil or Zoloft or Prozac, that actually works in contradiction to the human chemistry for some people. Those people who are overmethylated become suicidal. And that's why you see on the commercials, hey, take Kilmall. Kilmall helps relieve your depression. It creates wonderful things happening to you, but it can cause death, suicidal ideation, it can cause you to murder your family and relatives, and it's going to be $600. Okay? They don't know about the chemistry piece. And so they think these drugs are wonderful because they help some people, but they can severely harm quite a few others. Symptoms of undermethylation. People can be obsessive and compulsive. Gosh, a school like Purdue, I wonder if any of you here are obsessive or compulsive about anything like education, for example. Many of them can have allergies, low tolerance for pain, prior diagnosis of OCD, ritualistic behaviors. No fraternity members have those, right? Okay. Very strong will. Sometimes a lack of real endurance with concentration, but many people get over it. Here's something on the other side, though. Competitiveness in sports. And I don't mean the kind that you guys are used to, not that collegiate stuff. I mean the guys who go and kill people for sports. The Michael Jordans. Do you guys know who Michael Jordan is? You're a little bit younger than I am. Okay. These extremely competitive individuals who go out and will do anything in terms of inspiring their teammates or getting ahead to get ahead in sports. They oftentimes, a family history of high accomplishment. Does that sound familiar? Yes, he's raising his hands. He's actually yawning, but he's probably one of those people who's got a family history of high accomplishment. See, he's like, oh, yeah, right. I'm the first in my family. No, not at all. Oftentimes, they have a calm demeanor on the outside, but severe inner tension on the inside. Quite interestingly, many people who are undermethylated tend to be more slender, and many people who are overmethylated tend to be bigger, thicker people. And that's because methyl molecules actually turn into creatine. Now, guys, what does creatine do? I know someone here knows that. Builds muscle. Absolutely. So if you've got lots of methyl, you don't need to take creatine. That's something I'm just telling you guys, okay? So lots of methyl, don't need creatine. You make your own. If you're undermethylated, you don't have a whole lot of methyl to turn into creatine, so you tend to be more slight. Now, back when I was in school, I was a little bit smaller, and some of my football player colleagues were these walking trees. They amazed me. They had thighs that were the size of tree trunks. And these individuals, I was quite sure, looking in retrospect, were overmethylated people. Unlike undermethylated people, overmethylated people have a high pain tolerance. Undermethylated people tend not to. But here's the thing about undermethylated folks. They have a very, very strong capacity or propensity for addictive behaviors. Folks, this is where stuff gets dangerous. Because this is where, if you're undermethylated and you try a drug, for example, an illicit drug, just one time, you're likely to get hooked. An overmethylated person, on the other hand, they could probably do that drug 30,000 times and not get hooked. Now, I'm not going to say, you think you're overmethylated, go do drugs. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there's a danger in that if you are undermethylated and you get involved in any kind of a sport, you can get addicted to the sport. You can get addicted to gambling, get addicted to sex, get addicted to drugs, and have a higher capacity than an overmethylated or a normally methylated person. So here's the thing. We used to say growing up, well, you know, John did it, and he's fine. Well, guess what? Your parents would say, well, you're not John. Scientifically, we say, you sure as heck aren't John, because you've got more genetic and epigenetic factors that can make you vulnerable than John could have ever had. So we're very careful about that idea and cautious about addictions now, because there's no real way to predict who you are unless, of course, you're tested. And we will get back to that. I'm going to talk to you about Pyrrole disorder. The slide is up there for those of you who are scientists and really care, but let's talk about the Avengers movies. I love the Avengers movies. Any of you ever seen the Avengers movies? Who's your favorite character, sir? Black Panther. Well, interesting. Okay. Goes the moon. Yeah, all that fun stuff. Give me another character from the Avengers. Iron Man. Beautiful. She loves Tony Stark. Give me another character. Who? Thor. Where's Mjolnir? Indeed, I doth agreeeth with your commentary regarding the mighty Thor. Give me another character. Who? Batman. Are we in the same universe? He's DC. We're talking the amazing magic Marvel. Stan Lee, come on. Ant-Man. Oh, he's so secondary. Come on. Who?
Captain America.
I honor you. Captain America is a mighty and good soldier, a true patriot. But you're still missing a relatively infinitesimal person. Spider-Man. Oh. Thanos. The Hulk. Who said that? I'm going to give you $1,000 of Mr. Wells's money. Okay? The Hulk. I call Pyrrole disorder the Bruce Banner Incredible Hulk syndrome. How long does it take to get the Hulk from calm to rageful? It depends. On average. Very quickly. Welcome to Pyrrole disorder. There's a structural molecule called a pyrrole, kind of looks like a bird cage. It's in all of our red blood cells. When our red blood cells die every 120 days or so, they release all these molecules into the system. Under stress, these molecules undergo a startling metamorphosis. They turn into molecules that will now steal your zinc and your vitamin B6, two very important elements needed to make your neurotransmitters, especially your calming neurotransmitter, gamma aminobutyric acid. We call it GABA for short. So what happens is you can't make this calming stuff. You go from calm to rageful in a split second. Anyone know what road rage is? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I'm sure you guys have been driving and you decided you were going to flip somebody a little funny digit here because they ticked you off on the road. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Absolutely. He says, absolutely. I did it just the other day. Why did you get ticked off with that person? Was it really all that severe, if you think about it? Most of the time it wasn't. For whatever reason, you decided you were going to light up like no one's business. Well, guess what? You went Pyrrole. Because that's what happens. Short fuse syndrome. Anyone here Irish? Guess what? So am I. Believe it or not. Small percentage. The Irish are stereotypically what? Short-fused, hot-tempered, ready to brawl in a minute. And goes, yeah, that's him, all right. Ready to take on the universe at the drop of a hat because they are enraged. I have news for you. There are two populations on this planet that are what we call genetic pyrroles. In other words, they are genetically predisposed to get rageful on you in a split second. One of them is the Irish, but you would not believe who the other population is. Boston? No, not where they are, who they are. The lovely blonde-haired, blue-eyed individuals from Thor's homeland, the Scandinavians, the Danish, the Swedish, the Hollanders, mixing with the Germanics. These individuals also are extremely pyrroluric genetically. I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, outside of the Vikings, these are some pretty chilled people. I know a few days, they're pretty relaxed. If you talk to them, they'll tell you, yes, I am very calm on the outside, but inside I am deeply, deeply, energetically disturbed. And their families will tell you, oh no, Bjorn has a rage, he's got a temper going on. And then these family members will say, hey, you know what? What happened to that lovely redhead you were dating? You know that fiery spirited young lady? You say, yeah, I married her. I said, oh, bless you. Pyrrole disorder. What I want you to remember is the Bruce Banner Incredible Hulk syndrome. But guess what? Any form of stress can create that syndrome inside anyone in this room. It can be emotional stress, environmental stress, as in, hey, we're in a big city with lots of noise. It can be physical stress, I'm working out, I'm going on an extreme mountain range hiking, I haven't eaten in a long time, or I'm sick, I've got the flu, a cold, or I'm ill, severely ill. Any of those stressors can cause pyrrole molecules to increase in number, and then they do their thing, and you become extremely sensitive. You know that one. Somebody walks in the room who normally you're okay with dealing with, and you're like, look, I can't handle you today. Step back. You're ready to go pyrrole on them. Now you've got a name to go along with the syndrome. Now you have understanding. Understanding is half the battle. Common symptoms of pyrrole disorder at the bottom: poor stress control, high irritability or temper, extreme mood swings, severe inattention. And here's something interesting: sensitivity to lights, loud noises, textures, smells. Any of you ever had those things? You just like, you get your food and the first thing you do, smell it. If it doesn't smell good, you're not touching it. Okay. Or somebody comes in, oh, your aftershave is just too much. Get away from me. Any of that ever going on there? I know, I see you smiling back there. She's like, I just did that to Jonathan last week. Okay. Watch out, folks. Stuff can happen. Oh, I will skip that one. Let's talk about the effectiveness of targeted nutrient therapy for depression. Quick summary, Cliff Notes, it works. We'll move on. Now, what we come to, we call biotypes of depression. So I want to share with you, as far as depression is concerned, and things like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, it is not one common disorder. It is an umbrella name for many symptoms and signs that seem related, but they're all kind of different. There's a whole family of disorders present under the term depression, under the term schizophrenia. And to prove it, the great Carl Pfeiffer, in his research, showed that there are several different biotypes that actually produce depression. In the blue, the big one there, at 38%, is undermethylation. Now, this is an old slide. Right now, that's probably more likely about 65% because of epigenetics. You guys know about, you're probably a little bit young, right? I don't know if you know about prenatal vitamins yet. Is that correct? Oh, you're just smiling. You said, oh, yes, my mother had them when she was getting ready to have me. Okay. Prenatal vitamins have folic acid in there. Okay. Folic acid, when it gets into the womb, literally takes methyl away from the baby. So if the baby were normal in what we call methylation capacity, now it becomes less and less. It becomes what we call undermethylated. In the old days, we were pretty smart people as physicians. We said, well, you know, you need folic acid in order to prevent neural tube defects. Neural tube defects are things where basically the brain and the spinal cord will stick out of a hole in your head, and that's not really comparable for survival. So take your folic acid because it'll prevent neural tube defects and you'll be a good person and your baby will survive. Well, we figured out folic acid stops that from happening, and that's a good thing, but you only need to do it for the first trimester or for the first 3 months. Afterwards, what happens is that now your body's already fixed. It's clear the baby's doing okay, but we figured, hey, you know what? If 3 months was good, we should do it for 6. And then 6 months became 9 months. Then we got really brilliant and we decided to do it for a year. And now we're saying do it for a year and a half, even while you're breastfeeding the baby. Here's the problem. The people who came up with that knew nothing about methylation. Because what we've been doing is we've been stealing from that baby over the course of time, for a very long time, and predisposing our children to anxiety in the future, depression in the future, bipolar disorder in the future, and schizophrenia in the future. So undermethylation has become a big problem. Here we have in the red overmethylation producing depression. Really that number was 34%, now it's less because undermethylation has taken over. In the green, there's copper overload. That hasn't changed at all. So we know that methylation disorders, having too much copper, the Bruce Banner Incredible Hulk syndrome comes in at another 15%. All those things can create depression. And that's why many drugs don't work to actually help people who've got depression, because the drugs aren't treating the underlying cause. They're treating something surface. They're trying to mask the symptoms. Well, let's just say ADHD has got stuff biochemically that produces imbalances. Diet and GI issues, gastrointestinal issues. There are food allergies and sensitivities present, sometimes yeast growth and alcohol intoxication, casomorphines, glucomorphines. Dysbiosis is an imbalance between good and bad critters in your gut. Sugar, hypoglycemia, malabsorption, and poor digestion. Let's talk about something very interesting. You guys may or may not be familiar with yeast. Anyone here a microbiology student or biology student? No, you guys don't have those at DePaul. Here we have one young lady. Young lady, what is a yeast? Wonderful. You're a yeast, you're a yeast, you're a yeast, you're a yeast, I'm a yeast. Wouldn't you like to be a yeast too? What's the difference between a yeast and us? Okay. We've got tiny people. Yes. Who said that?
Their reproduction ways different, it's like budding or something like that.
Correct. They bud and so forth. How many of you drink beer? There we go. All righty. How do you make beer? What do you need? What are the major ingredients for beer? Yeast. Absolutely. What else? Barley. What else? These guys have got PhDs in beerology. Gotta love it. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Yeah, oh, no, you're snapping these days. You know, they used to do that back in the 60s. I thought it was funny in the movies. I can't wait to tell you. I went to Purdue. I talked to these students, and man, they're just doing the snapping thing now. It's back. So, cool. All right. So, what else do you need besides the yeast, barley, the hops? What else do you need to make beer? Sugar. And what else? Water. Beautiful. Friday night's over. Saturday night's over. It's time to get sober on Sunday to get ready for classes on Monday. But do you know, after your beer fests, that you're still brewing beer in your GI tracts? I said, no, that's not possible. I did the studies. I know that beer is just going to last only so long. Well, no, because what happens is that you've got yeast inside your GI tract now. And most of us live with it. Why is that? Because how many here like pizza? Be honest. Okay, you feed your yeast every time you got pizza. And believe it or not, this scenario I'm about to show you is kind of like the revenge of the body snatchers. You think you're in control. I have news for you, you're not. The yeast in your GI tract, in your intestines, actually send messages to your brain. Receptor sites for the toxins and the signals that yeast produce in your brain are the same ones as opioid drugs. Believe it or not. Now, somebody out there may be thinking, man, I was doing drugs all that time, all I do was eat pizza. Very, very close. They produce casomorphine and glucomorphine-like effects, which tell your brain, hey, I am happy, I am loving that slice, give me another one. And that's actually coming from the yeast. If you kill all that yeast, you don't get the same buzz from the food you love, like pizza. Believe it or not. Believe it, it's true. So yeast are very interesting creatures. Why is that? Because they can also produce foggy brain. So those of you who are sitting back trying to eat pizza the night before an exam, and then you're wondering why you made that silly little mistake there, guess what? You weren't thinking clearly enough, likely because your diet was part of the problem. Okay? Sugar we just talked about, we'll skip the rest. You are what you eat, but here's the thing. You should actually eat based upon who you are. Now, what does that mean? If I'm a girl, I eat girl foods. If I'm a boy, I eat boy foods. I'm not going to even get into gender identity issues. But here, I'm leaving the pulpit because I got to preach to the audience. How many here believe that a vegetarian diet is the best way to go? All right, we got one honest man. Who else? Young lady, beautiful. Sir, you were first. What is your name? Brantley. Brantley?
Yes, sir.
Albert, how are you? Dr. Mensah. Brantley, why do you think that's the case? Now, do you believe that for everybody, or you just believe that for yourself?
At least for me.
At least for you. Wonderful, honest man. How about you, young lady? What is your name?
Madeline.
Pardon?
Madeline.
Madeline. I love that name. Madeline, do you believe that to be the case for everyone, or do you believe that just for yourself?
Just for myself.
Isn't there anyone here who believes a vegetarian diet is the way everybody should eat?
I do, but I'm not going to make that decision.
Oh, good. He's an honest man. I love that. I want to talk to the carnivores in the room. Where? Right here. Ah, your buddy's told on you. What is your name, sir?
I'm Hank.
Hank. I'm Hank. Well, I've been a carnivore for 20 generations of my family. My grandpap was a carnivore. My caveman granduncle, he just let the steers come on by and just took a bite out of them. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Other carnivores in the room, please. Oh, we're pointing over here. Where's that? Let's see. One with the hat? All right. Yeah, I love you. Look at the size of this guy. Stand up. Stand up. Whoa! Look at this man. Look at that man. Look at those traps. The Hulk's not here because he is. You play sports?
I used to, yeah.
What'd you play?
I played football, basketball, and baseball.
He's a triathlete. Beautiful, beautiful. You can sit down now. What is your name again? Sorry.
I'm Luke.
Luke.
Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you. Luke, so what version do you like? You like your meat raw, cooked, live, walking? What do you like? How do you eat it?
Usually fresh off a grill.
Fresh off the grill. Okay, what's your favorite meat?
I like a good ribeye.
You like a good, I like that too. Have you ever had the cowboy ribeye? It's like,
Yeah.
20, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I'm with you there, I'm with you there. Do you think that everybody should eat that way?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. He's honest straight from the start. Now, I love this because we got a little bit of controversial dichotomy here, and it's okay, it's okay. But here's the very interesting thing. Actually, based upon methylation testing, if you are an undermethylated person, you're actually supposed to eat more meat. Now, remember what I said about overmethylated people? They look like you. They're hairy, they're manly, big fellas. They just stomp it. When he probably causes seismic earthquakes when he walks, okay? It's a beautiful thing. But I have news for you. You probably should be eating more vegetables. Okay? A vegetarian diet is right up your alley. You just don't know it. You're eating more and more methyl because methyl comes from animal protein, okay? So he's got his, yes sir, you guys can share with that one in a minute, okay? He's eating his steaks, he's loving his steaks, they taste great, but the fact is, I'm not saying you do. I'm gonna step back when I say this. I'm not saying you do. But if you were to have anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, any of those things, your diet could make you worse. If you were suicidal, your diet could actually make you worse. Now, our man back there is saying, see, I told you, you should be eating vegetables. It'd be a good thing for you. Well, guess what, though? Let's move on over here to our vegetable people. See, the deal here is,
I do eat meat, everybody.
he does eat meat. He's like, don't bother me, I am a meat eater. We are non-judgmental here. We are scientists, in pretense at least. Our goal is to just talk about some of our misconceptions about diet. There is, first of all, no one-size-fits-all dietary regimen. That's a fallacy. But how do I know that? Because we've had young ladies who were vegetarians who almost committed suicide because they found out they were low in methyl. And what's in dark green leafy vegetables, you probably don't know, but lots of folic acid is in dark green leafy vegetables. So the more dark green leafy vegetables you eat, if you happen to be one of your academically endowed individuals, the odds are you're an undermethylated person. You're actually stealing what little you've got. Let me put that in a different perspective for you. Who here is a millionaire? Anyone? Okay. Who here wishes they were a millionaire? Very good. Now, I'm going to come back here because you guys are hiding from me. One of you two said you wished you were a millionaire, right? Okay. DJ, can I have $1 million, please? No? Okay. All right. So let's say I give you $1 million, okay? Free and clear. She's now a millionaire. And I tell her, I'm going to give you $1,010,000. I'm not saying anything about you personally, but she's greedy, and she says, I want that extra 10 bucks. I got $1 million, but that's not good enough. But what if I said to you, if you give me $1,020,000, I'll give you $1,010,000. Now, you guys know math. Where does that leave her? Exactly, in deficit. She's actually in deficit. So many people who don't realize that if you are anxious or depressed or have any of those challenges, and you don't know it, but you're actually undermethylated, you're low in methyl, a high vegetable diet, dark green leafy vegetables, I'm sorry to tell you folks, kale, spinach, broccoli, soy, all these wonderful things are high in folates, high in folic acid. They steal what little methyl you've got. I should have made that analogy a different one. You are dirt broke. You're a college student. And you're down to your last dollar, and somebody says, you know what? I'm gonna give you 50 cents. And you say, oh, thank you, man, I need my beer. I need that 50 cents for the beer. And then you say, yeah, I'll give you the 50 cents, but I need $1 from you. What's that like? It's like, man, that's dumb. I'm not going to do that. But that's how many of us eat all the time. We just don't know it. And we're wondering why the cleaner we try to become, because of what we've been taught or told, the worse we actually start to feel. It has everything to do with molecular science, okay? So it's very, very interesting. It's very, very difficult. The one thing that still confounds me, I will not understand this, is that for whatever reason, we have a very strong tendency as a human race to eat the exact opposite way of the way we're actually designed. We've got all these people who are undermethylated geniuses wanting to eat vegetables. We've got all these big, giant carnivorous Rex people trying to eat meat. And the fact is, it should be switched, okay? Now look, if you're doing okay in life, no big deal, right? Eat whatever way you want. Have the steer go around and bite off of it. Graze on the grass if you want to all day long. No big deal. But if one of these conditions is problematic for you, then there is no such thing as the one-size-fits-all diet, okay? That tends to be a huge problem. So, in our comprehensive evaluation, what do? The first thing we look at is what is out of balance in the system. Do you have too much of a nutrient, or do you have too little? We look at the idea of metal regulation and dysregulation. We're talking about metals like zinc, metals like copper. They all have an effect. We talk about epigenetic and environmental factors, GI issues. Testing for methylation is huge. I'm going to share something with you. How many of you people play sports, male and female? Okay, team sports or individual? Team sports? No? What do you do, row? What do you do? You run. Okay, great. Team sport people. What if I were to tell you, if I were to see chemistry, I could put together a better football team than you guys can pick, and I would never ever see these people. Can you imagine that? Why is that? Because by looking at the chemistry, I can pretty much tell you what these guys are going to look like. My quarterback, I want him to be one undermethylated dude, because he's going to be as competitive as all get out, okay? Quarterbacks, as you know, anyone watch football? I'm sorry. Anyone here? Yeah, thought so. Okay. So quarterbacks, the captain there of the play, these guys are thinking all the time, I gotta win, I'm going to win, I'm gonna make my team win. If I have to carry them on my shoulders, I'm gonna do that. Extremely competitive people. Your linemen, on the other hand, I guarantee you, you don't want a lineman, offensive or defensive, to be sitting there as an undermethylator. You want guys who don't feel pain, right? You want guys whose only thought is, I'm going to eat you alive. That's what you want for a lineman, okay? Your running backs, you want a little bit of both there, okay? A little bit of creativity, a little bit of competitiveness. Those are all great things. Same on the basketball court, okay? You want your point guards to be some undermethylated dudes. You probably want your center and your forwards to be overmethylated. If you get a balance in between, so be it, okay? But that's how interestingly significant chemistry can be. Because I can tell you, one of the things about overmethylated people, they're very laid back. They're not into rules and regulations. They're very creative people. These are your art majors, your philosophy majors, your theater majors, all the people you love in Hollywood, they're usually overmethylated folks, okay? Unfortunately, your doctors, lawyers, engineers, PhDs, academics, typically are undermethylated people. They like their rules, they like their regulations, they like the examples, they want to follow everything step by step by step by step by step, and they can be control freaks. Anybody know any control freaks? It says you probably live with them, right? Mom and dad to start. Overview of treatment. Well, the way we do things is first we do a physical exam, we do an extensive patient history, we do lab testing, so we don't just guess. We actually test your chemistry. And then we put together what you guys would call a high-tech multivitamin, okay? But they're not vitamins. What they are what I call TMTs, targeted molecular therapy. It's like playing pool, right? You guys played pool before, right? Okay? So if you know what you're doing, you sit down and you say, 6 ball in the corner pocket, bank shot, goes in. If you don't know what you're doing, you say, I'm gonna hit this and I hope one of those balls goes in there. That's not what we do. We're very targeted, we're very precise, okay? We put together a nutrient program for you, and then, look, that's only as smart as we have to be. We give your body that has your blueprint, that knows what to do with what we're going to give it, we give it what it needs. It is the mechanic that fixes the Lamborghinis. And you guys are all far more intricate than any Lamborghini could ever possibly hope to be. Okay? Now then, I didn't come here just to talk to you and leave you with some wonderful philosophical and scientific advice. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give you some practical things you guys can do. Take out your cell phones and take your little pictures or memorize it, whatever you're going to do here. These are 3 examples that without knowing your chemistry, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stressed, you can order this stuff from, well, not the Mensah Medical brand, but you can order this stuff from Amazon, you can order it from Mensah Medical, you can order it from wherever, and within 30 to 45 minutes, depending on which one of these agents you order, your anxiety levels can go way down. You don't have to do mantras and meditate. You don't have to go out and run 6 miles. Listen, you're stressed before an exam and you find yourself getting a little bit too stressed, you can actually take one of these elements up here. Now, usually when we know your chemistry, we can tell you which one is most likely to work. But what I wanted to do was, I wanted to help you guys just with the idea that GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, that's the calming agent I told you about in your brain chemistry. Taking GABA can actually help produce calm. If you're having trouble sleeping, GABA, 30 to 40 minutes before bed, can help relax you into sleep. L-theanine is the next one, and that one can also be very good for calming. GABA generally works with any chemistry. L-theanine tends to work with overmethylators. And then this popular one on the left that you may or may not have heard of is inositol. Inositol is a B-like vitamin, and it helps with chemistry as well, but it can lower and take off that edge to help you relax and also help you go to sleep. So those of you who are stressed out, and once again I reiterate, none of you could possibly be stressed out at any given point in time and day in your 4 years of collegiate activity, this could be of help. Now, we put the green labeled Mensah Medical brands up there, but I just wanted to illustrate a point. That's who's talking to you. As I said, you can order any version of this stuff from Amazon or wherever have you, and it'll likely have a good opportunity, a good chance of working to help assist you get through some difficult times, okay? My thing is, look, we enjoy collegiates, you guys, we love you to death. We don't want you suffering the way we did. And you guys have it worse. You guys have got more intense lives than we did in school, no matter where we went. But the key is there's help, there's understanding, and here's an example. A lot of this has nothing to do with me. As I said, there are many companies who make this stuff. Side effects? None, believe it or not, okay? That's the best part. You don't believe me? I'll tell you a story. About 7 years ago, that inositol was taken off the market. You know why? Because drug dealers were taking it and cutting it into some of their drug paraphernalia and distributing it because it produced a wonderful calming effect. Really, really wonderful. I went to a small town once where I was working as a physician. I'd been 4 years into this whole field, and one of my patients came to me and said, "Doc, I'm feeling really anxious." I said, "Okay, try some of this inositol." He said, "Thank you." A week later, his brother came in and said, "Doc, I'm so-and-so's brother, and what did you give that guy?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "He was really stressed out, and now he was really, really calm." I said, "Yeah, it's inositol. You can try some, but don't you dare try selling it on the street." It's like that. It can be very beneficial. I want to leave you with this. For those of you who are suffering in silence, depression is a flaw in chemistry. It's not a flaw in character, okay? I kind of sailed through a lot of things because I wanted to leave time for questions. Dr. Albert Mensah, Mensah Medical, thank you very much for your time and attention. So now we do have to plug ourselves. If you ever have any questions, you can contact us at that number, 630-256-8308. Visit us online at www.mensahmedical.com or www.mensahresearch.org, okay? Questions? Actually, this is what I've been waiting for because I'm sure some of you got, yes, young lady.
So some like antidepressants take 3 weeks to build up to efficacy levels, and
No, GABA is immediate. There's an element called GABA max that can work in 10 to 15 minutes. I kid you not. I didn't believe it either until we had this autistic teenager, 17 years old, built like a football player, running up and down the hallways of our institution. First time I saw this kid, his father was a policeman chasing him down our hallway. I jumped out of the room to see what was going on, and I said to my product specialist, I said, Dolores, give that kid GABA max, we're gonna try it. That kid, kind of like you, young man, calmed down within 10 minutes. 20 minutes later, he was slumping in his chair. We're talking minutes, not hours, not days, for calming. So, good stuff. Yes, sir?
So they help with sleep. Say you take it in the morning, it's going to make you drowsy throughout the day.
No, that's the good part. Because it takes you down and relaxes you, okay? So it's like you're stressed out, your day's about to start, you take some, 45 minutes later, oh gosh, you know, you got the time wrong on the test, you actually missed it, you're late for this class, things aren't going well, but life is okay, you'll get through it. That's what it's kind of like. Takes the edge off. Doesn't change your circumstances, but it takes the edge off. Yes, sir. Then, sir.
So would you, as a part of what you guys do at your research institute and at the medical center, what percentage would you say is based on nutrition advice?
Nutrition or treatment? Which?
Well,
nutrition is diet.
right.
Okay. Now, with autism, we know we can correct a lot about diet within the first month and see some great shifts, but it doesn't reverse or stop the neurodegeneration that is actually autism. For everyone else, diet can be part of a component, but it's still 95% correcting the underlying imbalance. Okay? So for example, I talked about copper in females. Well, how many of you know that chocolate has got copper? How many of you know that spinach has got copper? Almonds. Who here likes almonds? Yeah, big time go-to. Almonds and avocados. Almond avocado salads, anyone? That's all copper stuff. So if you've got high copper, if you've got agitation, if you've got depression, especially if you're female, okay, those foods actually contribute to your situation. They don't help them. Now, for you males out there who are impulsive, can't focus, et cetera, you also can be copper toxic. And the thing is, your diet can actually make you worse. Correcting it doesn't undo what's happened. It's like the leak in the ceiling, okay? You gotta get up there and patch that ceiling, otherwise the water keeps dripping, the copper keeps flowing. So food can help not make you worse by changing your diet, but it doesn't correct the underlying imbalance. It's like you need 20 times more of what you were born with to fix the problem than it ever took to get into the problem. Sir, sir.
If this stuff is so effective, then why is it not like a major form of treatment for, because I've never heard of like this stuff before. I've only heard of like medication. Why is it not?
I love it, because we weren't taught this in medical school because we didn't know it at that time. So this is all the new stuff that's really happened in the last 30 or 40 years. Now, how many of you are engaged in research? Okay, you have a great research finding today. How long does it take to get into a research journal? He said a very, very long time before it gets published. Now, 50,000 people read it. How many you think are going to be responsive to it? 100, 200. Out of those 100 or 200, how many you think are going to actually try to implement something where they can use it on a practical level? Less than 15. We went from 5,000 to less than 15. That's part of how science works. We're dumb. We read stuff, we go, that's really interesting. Toss the magazine. 50 years later, somebody picks up that same article and says, that's pretty interesting, I'm gonna have to think about this. And then forgets about it. 30 years after that, his grandchild says, Grandpa, weren't you reading that article about 20 years later when he's grown up? Then he decides to do some clinical relevance evaluation. And then it takes another 34 years to get it into medical school. And then everybody learns about it. So in that span of time, we're talking about a good 100 to 150 years. So we're on the, but see, life is different now because technology, learning is faster paced. We don't have time to wait anymore. So when we see this and we have clinical evidence and we've got research, institutions like ours act on that. And that's why. Now, we're actually training doctors. We've got 600 doctors trained in Australia, and I have personally trained more than 550 of them. We've got doctors here in the US who are in seminars learning about this, but there's no formal training yet. You'll hear about it likely in Australia and elsewhere globally, and then it'll come to the United States more popularly. Yes, ma'am.
So just to clarify, the supplements that you're promoting with your clinic, are they all like ones that your brain already makes? Like GABA and inositol, they're already present in your brain. Is that what you're promoting?
Well, no, first of all, I want to share with you, we're not promoting supplements. We're not a supplement company. We have a limited brand of supplements because many people can't find the supplements we talk about with regard to exactly what it is they need. So we have a backup system. We actually write prescriptions. We are traditional doctors. We write prescriptions, but our prescriptions are science-based molecular prescriptions. They are sent to a compounding pharmacy that puts together a very unique set of molecular agents into a capsule. That's why we call it a nutraceutical. We don't get any of that money. It's not our compounding pharmacy, but it is an actual real pharmacy that requires a real prescription. We create Kardashian designer nutrient supplements for you, hand-tailored to your particular chemistry. The Kardashians would kill to have that stuff. Okay, they would. Not that you guys follow any of those people, but that's all I know. I'm an old fart. So, yes, sir. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Never mind. No. Yes, sir. No. The reason why you don't is because for every supplement you're taking, and by the way, when I say supplement, what I mean is every group of supplements put into a capsule. They're like 8 or 10 different elements needed to correct your chemical imbalances that come together to work. They're a team. They're like a football team. They're like a baseball team, a basketball team, any kind of team. You need all those members to reach the goal, okay? They don't get tolerated because your system is using, your body is using those elements every single day. So it's hard to accumulate a high degree of anything and therefore tolerance to them, okay? It's like saying, do you get a tolerance to food? Our steak man here, do you get a tolerance to steak? Unless you eat it every day for like 20 weeks.
Not at all.
Not at all, because your system uses it up. You're putting in what your body doesn't have, or you're removing what there's excess of. That's what we do. Yes, ma'am.
So I had a question about the copper overload.
Yes.
So like, is it something, you were talking about foods that have like naturally high amounts of copper in them. So is it something that we're already genetically predisposed to that we like make worse for ourselves? Or is it
Yes.
something that we generate for ourselves?
No, it's something that we make worse. That's a great question, and that's a failure on my part, forgive me, for not explaining it clearly. Many individuals, 34% of all females, have a genetic predisposition. Something is not working right. They cannot remove copper from their systems. Now, copper is not a bad creature just by itself. We need copper in order to make blood vessels. If you don't have blood vessels, you can't grow muscles, you can't grow tendons, you can't grow ligaments, you can't grow a baby, which is why copper is higher in pregnant females. But like in any system, whatever you build up, you've also got to be able to remove it. The garbage men, if you will, in copper toxic females, half of them are lazier and they're on strike. So basically, the copper builds up over time. And when it reaches a certain threshold, that's when you can get postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, anxiety, rage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it shows up later in females than it does males. Little boys, age 5 years and over, they can exhibit impulsivity, agitation. Anyone know who Bart Simpson is? Okay. Bart Simpson, to me, is a copper toxic male. He's exactly what you see in terms of copper toxicity showing up in a little boy. He's impulsive. He can't control himself. He'll do things. He may pretend to be sorry. He's really not. We know that. But he can't control himself in many ways, shapes, and forms. Okay? Rage, impulsivity, agitation, poor focus and attention. That's what shows up in little boys. Because little boys are not, their systems are not designed to have high levels of copper. If you're gonna someday, if you're designed to make a baby, or carry a baby rather, I should say, then your body is used to having estrogen and higher levels of copper, but then it can still get to a saturation point. And when that happens, that's when we start to see all these symptoms. So it's really an issue of, unfortunately, a genetically compromised, not person, family lineage. If you check the family history of anyone with one of these copper toxicity issues, you'll see breast cancer, fibroid tumors, endometriosis going generationally way back. Any of those things can show up and manifest, and it's really an underlying copper toxicity. Okay? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir, I could not hear you.
I said, does GABA help with the copper?
No. GABA is purely for the symptom. By the way, GABA and inositol and L-theanine are only about symptoms. Okay? They don't treat the underlying cause. The thing is, that can take a while. That can take some weeks or even some months to get covered and get fixed. But we don't want you suffering in the meantime. So there's something you can do to help with symptoms right away, and that's what GABA and L-theanine do. They help with the symptoms. They don't treat the underlying cause. Yes, sir?
So with this GABA and inositol, is it more effective to take it like routinely or
No.
only for
It's like Tylenol or Advil. You got a headache, you take it. You don't have a headache, you don't need to. You feel anxious, you take it. Otherwise, don't worry about it. And you don't. The only thing with GABA is that if you take it for more than 6 days in a row, forgive me, I was wrong. If you take GABA for more than 6 days in a row, it tends to do what we call downregulate receptor sites. And so you might get used to it and tolerate it. So what you do is, if you're taking it for 6 days in a row, like church, you rest on the 7th day. Then you pick it back up on Monday. Okay, yes, sir?
So the GABA is the only one with like a long-term side effect, like there's no like long-term side effects of taking anything like this?
None of them. No long-term side. It's like asking this question. Now, it's a fair question, it's a good one. But imagine asking yourself, are there long-term side effects to being me? Are there long-term side effects to my heart beating? Yes, one day it's going to stop. Okay. But the fact is, each of these elements that we talk about are elements that your body actually needs and uses. It's just being used at a much higher dosage because that's what's necessary to correct the imbalance. Okay, but good question. Yes, sir, then ma'am.
So like what's the difference between me taking something like GABA versus something like CBD and like having a CBD product where it's also a calming effect that's not like psychoactive?
Whoo! You asked me a loaded question. And some of you are not going to like the answer. Okay. I went before the state of Illinois, the General Assembly. And I went there because they were trying to legalize marijuana. And I said, look, folks, that's not a good idea. And the reason why is because even CBD can cause psychosis. We treat an awful lot of schizophrenics. And forgive me, they're like you. They're young males between 18 and 26 years of age. Many of them started using marijuana back in high school, and they became schizophrenic. I'm not saying this happens to everyone, so don't get me wrong. What I'm sharing with you is that there is the potential for everything from a schizophrenic break to psychosis to who knows what, even associated with CBD, because many people talk about THC versus CBD. CBD can do that, and it can do that in kids. So we are not fans, not because we have a personal agenda or a personal bias. It's because I'm tired of seeing people come into the clinic whose lives have been changed, they've been destroyed, they've been taken away. They were doing very well in college. I'm not trying to influence you guys one way or the other, I'm just telling you the facts. Doing very well in college, and they have a break. And then their lives are changed for a good 5, 10 years, who knows how long. Here's the thing. You can take CBD, you can take a lot of things, but each one of those has a risk associated. And you don't know your chemistry, you don't know your biotype. That is a risk. Elements like inositol, GABA, and so forth, there are no risks. They don't produce any of those things. So people say, well, I take CBD for calming, and I say, well, listen, there are many elements besides even the 3 we've talked about that can produce calming with no potential risks. So that's how I put it, okay? CBD is still highly unexplored. There's tons of research talking about good things that CBD does. There's also research showing challenging things CBD does, and of course THC as well. So the reason I traveled to Springfield, Illinois to talk to these people is because they don't know what it is that as a research institution, we and many other institutions do know and understand. By the way, the Australians are funny people. They've been doing this stuff for a very, very long time, longer than we have in the United States. And they commonly know what the side effects are. And they try to tell folks, but hey, it's everybody up for themselves, and you do what you want to do. But we just want you to be informed about the choices that you make. There's some things that just have no risk at all. And that's what these things are. Okay? I have no stock in them, by the way. Okay? My goal is just to help educate. Yes, sir?
Is there anything that we can take that helps us focus or study better?
Ooh, I was afraid that question was going to come up. The answer is yes, there actually is. But here's how I have to put it to you. If you know your chemistry, your biochemistry, there's an element called tyrosine, which is an amino acid. It promotes focus and attention. It works through the dopaminergic pathway just like Adderall does, just like Strattera. All those things, they work in the same way, but the difference is tyrosine as an amino acid starts at the foundation in your system, and then the body adapts it. It's not artificially imposed as a drug. The problem is that for about 10 to 15% of people who try that, it can lead you down the norepinephrine pathway and create excitability and agitation. So we usually don't recommend you do that without talking to a doctor first, okay? But for you overmethylators, there's also a focus and attention element. It's called DMAE, and I'm not going to tell you what that stands for, okay? But it is there. What am I saying? Carl Pfeiffer, the great Carl Pfeiffer, had a rule. It's called Pfeiffer's Law. For every drug that does something, there's a natural element that can do the same thing without side effects. And the simple fact is, where do most drugs come from? Plants. The Amazon jungle. They're coming from natural products that are sitting there. They just grab the natural stuff, pharmaceuticalize it, and charge you a whole bunch of money that your insurance company pays for, so nobody cares. But there are no side effects to those things. Yes, ma'am?
So say you have the GABA supplement, so that's like in the brain, it's technically like an inhibitory neurotransmitter, I believe.
Beautiful.
If you have
She's got it going on.
glutamate acid, which is
Yeah.
excitatory,
Yes.
would that like affect the glutamic acid's role like within the brain, or does that not really have an effect since you're adding more of the GABA?
It does not change glutamic acid's capacity in the brain. What she's talking about is a system of talking between nerves. So I'm going to borrow a couple of you guys. Young man, come on up here. And young man, you come up here. And young lady, would you come up here, please? Yeah, that's right. She's like, what? Demonstration time. Oh, let's go to the front, guys. Come on over to the front. All right, so you're over here. Young lady, I want you to come in the middle. Okay? This man is a nerve, and he gets on somebody's nerves. He wants to send a signal by way of this young lady, and she's going to send a signal to this young man. You, sir, would you kindly come up here? This young man is going to be the no signal. And young man, you come over here. He's going to be a very big no signal. You're going to come over here, okay? So he wants to talk to her. He's nerve number 1. This is nerve number 2. That's nerve number 3. We've got a naysayer who blocks the message. You just stand right here. This guy's sizable enough, you can't even see her, right? That's a nay. But then we get this gentleman over here. He is a yay-sayer. And he says, you know what? I'm going to compete against this dude. And I'm going to remove him from the picture. So now this fellow can talk to her. This is what we call competitive inhibition and competitive. They're like, good job, yeah. And that's kind of what glutamic acid, the yay-sayer, does, versus GABA, the naysayer. The naysayer GABA stops the idea of communication and slows things down in the system. The naysayer. But you know what? This entire row of guys, come over here. We should do this up on the stage. It's going to take all these guys to move him. He's the naysayer. So if we add a whole bunch of glutamic acid, They move him, guys, move him out of the way at your own risk, okay? All that glutamic acid overwhelms the GABA. In other words, they give more positive signal so that message can be communicated, as opposed to the GABA, which would say no. Now, if we throw in, you guys can sit down, please. Thank you. Not you guys, you stay here. Not yet, we're not done yet. We need more naysayers. The gentleman with the yellow hat, you guys can sit down. And our researcher in the suit, come on up. And our young man with the Purdue white on. Okay. Again, our first nerve wants to send a signal. You three come over here. And he says, look, that's my little sister. I'm not going to let you talk to her, okay? You can forget it. So you guys block that signal. They are GABA. They are inhibitory. They're going to stop that signal from reaching this nerve, okay? Why? Because it's no longer a 1-to-1 ratio. It's a 3-to-1 ratio, okay? Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. Thank you, young lady. Now, I don't want to hear any comments about me being sexist. It was just illustrating a point, okay? The more of any one of those things you have, the greater likelihood of you causing a signal to either go forward or stop. So it's not about changing the action of glutamic acid or glutamate. Glutamate is a positive signal messenger for the nerve to communicate. If you outnumber the glutamate with more GABA, which is what we do, basically it tells that nerve, you can't send that signal. So it's competitive inhibition, to be more technical, okay? So that's how GABA works. It just floods the system and tells it, hey man, relax. You're not going anywhere. You're not gonna touch my sister, okay? Yes, ma'am.
If you said this is like present in Australia and then it'll go everywhere and then here, why is the US last if like we have the research here?
Because the US is dumb.
Well, yeah, but.
You know, everywhere in the US, have you guys ever heard of lithium? Can I tell you a quick story about lithium? Okay, very quick. So lithium was discovered in the United States of America in Texas, in a small town. And they realized that in this small town, there was very little depression. People were just happy-go-lucky, you know, just enjoying life. And that's rare, statistically. So they checked the water, they checked the land, they checked the earth, everything, all sorts of soil samples, and they found high levels of lithium. So what did they do? The researchers went to the top doctors and top researchers in the United States and said, hey, we found this thing, lithium, we think it's pretty cool, we need to think about this, it seems to help people with depression. They went, nah, that's okay. So these researchers said, fine. Then came the Global Congress of Researchers with regard to depression in Sweden. These same researchers went to Sweden to give their data, and all the doctors and researchers from around the world were there. And they said, this is interesting. We're going to go back to our countries and try it. So great success came around. People in all these countries were doing well. Depression was being fixed because of lithium. And so finally, the next World Congress came around, and the US doctor said, this is mind-boggling. You guys are brilliant. They said, this lithium thing, this is awesome. Where did you find it? How did you know about this? They said, America. The American researchers were clueless because in America, we are slow to change. We are slow to accept new ideas and new thoughts. We wait for it to get through the 150 years of trial and tribulation before we want to try it. That's the reason why countries abroad are more open, they're more willing to look at evidence, and they're willing to try stuff. That's safe, by the way. Safe. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So you've spoken a lot about, like, if you know what your biotype is, hydroxyl type, then you know what to take. How would you go about finding that out if you don't have the means to get tested? Because, like you said, this thing takes time to implement into the system.
Testing is not that difficult. Blood and urine tests at a LabCorp facility. Okay. We recommend going through an organization called Direct Health Access Labs, DHA, for a consultation. They'll tell you which LabCorp to go to, tell you, they'll send all that information to the lab. All you have to do is go there, forgive me, pee in a cup, freeze it, chip it, whatever it is, and then get your blood drawn. And we can find out your chemistry just like that. Okay?
Locally in this area, or would you have to go to Indianapolis or Chicago?
No, there should be one here in this area. Lafayette's a pretty big place, and I doubt very seriously there's a hindrance to getting lab work done. It all involves Mr. Wells. Where's Mr. Wells? Oh, there he is. Did you have that information with anything with direct health on there?
Our brochure has our office number, and the folks at our office are aware that we're sharing the number, and they've been told, make sure you give them DHA information if anybody calls.
So anybody who wants to know their chemistry, we actually kind of prep the whole situation with our staff. If you want to give them a call, they'll just say, listen, I heard Dr. Mensah's presentation. I'd like to know about how to get testing done. They'll share with you Direct Health's number, and you can work through them. And you can have a consultation with me, okay? And believe me, that's a lot cheaper than being one of our patients. I promise you, okay? And you can implement that now. Yes, ma'am.
So do things like copper overload and all the other things you listed always necessarily lead to depression or schizophrenia, or is it just sometimes that you happen to have one of those, so that's an outcome of it? Or is it kind of, oh, you have a copper overload, you're definitely going to have one of these things?
I can tell you that the vast majority of people with, for example, a copper overload have something going on as a manifestation. Okay, so it's like you've got, a bad example, clay. That clay has the potential to be a lot of different things depending on who the sculptor is that works with that clay. So different epigenetic issues can turn a copper toxicity into just anxiety, or they can turn it into a fibroid tumor, or they can turn it into cancer. But as I was sharing with you earlier, if you look at the family history, the family line of a female with high copper, most of their relatives going back generations had something related to copper. Okay, it may not be the exact same thing, but then when we do these analyses with family histories, every single patient we have, by the way, we do a family history. That's how we know these things, okay? You will see that different manifestations, if somebody's got high copper, something is going on. Something is going on. I forgot to say something to you, especially to you females, about oral contraceptives. Oral contraceptives actually make copper toxicity worse. The estrogen-based ones, and I know this is where all the women start freaking out, because we deal with young ladies all the time, but I have to let you know. I have a story for you. I'm full of stories, I'll be short. A young man and a young lady dating, one of our patients said, I got on the birth control because I really liked this guy. We wanted to be very good friends, intimate. And the interesting thing is, she started developing anxiety, irritability, et cetera, and they broke up. And for the longest time, she couldn't figure out what happened. And talking to him, he's like, she just became a different person. Well, it was because she was copper toxic. That actually ended the relationship for which she started taking the oral contraceptives for. That doesn't mean that you stop oral contraceptives. It means you find a different version, perhaps a progesterone-based instead of an estrogen-based oral contraceptive, or you find a different means. This is for the copper toxic female. Not all females respond that way. 35% of females have estrogen dominance and have copper toxicity susceptibility. That means 65% don't. But 35% is a lot of people. Okay? We had, yes, sir. Absolutely. No. Well, yes and no. Okay. When you say depression piles on lots of people, remember we talked about something called pyrroles. Yeah. Pyrroles, that Bruce Banner Incredible Hulk syndrome thing, can also produce depression and anxiety. So now when you talk about stress feeding upon itself, that's oftentimes Pyrrole disorder. Treatable, 3 weeks to 3 months, done deal. Okay? That's why I'm talking to you guys, because some of the stuff you're going through, you'd be amazed sometimes how simple to treat it is. The other side is that undermethylation can also produce depression. And when you get to too much stress after too much stress after too much stress over years, you finally break at that point. But that one takes anywhere between 9 months to a year and a half to correct. Okay? But in the meantime, you could be doing a lot of stuff that you think is good and actually creating more problems. Okay, we had a question over here.
Yeah,
good question.
When it comes to
I would, because that's the fun part. Okay, there's heaviness with what we do, and then there's some fun things that you can do. If fun involves, spending a little bit of money to get to know who you are. If you know your methylation status, if you know your copper status, if you know your zinc status, the world becomes a very different place. You now start to put together the right combinations of foods, and your body eats this up. They do, it does, okay? Because that's what it needs. We don't know, for the longest time, we've never known. We assumed first it was eat your meat. Back in the 1930s, these big guys with big giant bellies and flexing, thinking they're great, and now we say they were fat, but that was healthy for them back then. What do? Steak and eggs and bread all day long, not realizing they'd be becoming hypoglycemic, becoming blah, 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 blah. Now we know with your chemical testing exactly what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating. And that promotes truly efficient functioning. I'm not saying you turn into Superman, but you turn into the most Superman you can be. You optimize yourself, okay? Yes, sir?
What would you say the supplement effects would have on traumatic mental issues like PTSDs?
It's helpful. It's helpful, but usually with PTSD, there's only so much that chemistry does, and then you also will need some level of therapy, okay? But having said that, there are new neurological treatments that involve stimulating the cerebellum, and I don't mean putting a probe in the cerebellum. They're actual programs that are computer-based that can actually trigger separating the trauma from the event. What does that mean? When you think about what happened to you, you get anxious or stressed, panicky. But what if you could think about it and not have any of those things happen to you? There are actually computer programs that can teach your brain to separate those two things. So that, in combination with nutrient therapy, tends to help tremendously. If you have any further questions about PTSD for a loved one or whatever, feel free to give us a call, and we can talk about that and share with you what those programs are that are computer-based. Those are neurological treatments as well as biochemical treatments. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir?
Yeah, so the topic keeps coming up about getting tested. How often would you need to get retested?
Okay, it depends on what your goal is. If your previous question was to figure out my diet. Once you've figured it out, you don't need to be tested anymore if that's all you're looking for. It's just FYI. I'm an undermethylator, I have normal copper, I'm a little bit low in zinc, and I've got Pyrrole Disorder. So guess what? Now we know what you're supposed to do dietarily, you're done. No more testing is necessary. If we're treating your anxiety or depression, what we do is then we follow your levels every 6 months for the first year, and then once a year thereafter. So whatever is high, like copper toxicity, that actually comes down. We actually bring down your copper. If you're low in zinc, we bring that up. If you've got high pyrroles, we lower them. If you're undermethylated, we pour methyl into your system. If you're overmethylated, we take it out. He likes his methyl. He doesn't want to be taken out. Yes, sir?
So, like, depending on when you go in for, like, blood testing, things like that, is there a certain diet that you need to follow before you go in?
Nope.
So, like, the numbers don't fluctuate day to day drastically. So
They fluctuate a little bit, depending on a few factors, but if you're undermethylated, that doesn't change. That is who you are, okay? The problem is who you are isn't gelling with your environment, so we've got to help modify that. But that's who you are forever. If you're overmethylated, same thing. If you're copper toxic, here's the deal. We can bring down your copper, but if we're not intervening, your system is pre-programmed to produce more, okay? If you're pyroluric, that's a whole other story. With Pyrrole disorder, when stressors come down, the pyrroles tend to come down a little bit, but you still got that tendency to hulk out, okay? So it depends on each chemistry. Yes? We reverse, yes. Yes. The research is all going in the wrong direction, first of all. If you read the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine, if you read the journals of clinical nutrition and clinical biochemistry, if you look at and these are all pioneers, okay? There are very particular systems. They're looking, for example, one of the big problems with genetic research in autism is that they're all looking for the autism gene. That's sheer ignorance in and of itself. The human being is far more complicated. There are at least 5 to 6 genes independently that get triggered by oxidative stress that move in the wrong direction. Those things involve everything from neurotransmitter production to gastrointestinal issues, to oxidative stress, to inflammation, to metal dysregulation. All of those are present in the average autistic child. Now, each child has a different level of sensitivity and a different level of intensity in each one of those 5 or 6 different systems. But just about every successful practitioner who is treating autism is looking at each of those elements and treating them accordingly. We here in traditional medicine do sit down and look for the medical gene that causes autism, and guess what we're getting? Nowhere. Because we've got the wrong idea. We don't know. Well, there is actually a system in place. We've had people researching for a very long time, and we understand what autism is. And by the way, I'm going to give you something that 99% of the doctors on this planet don't know. Autism and Alzheimer's. Would any of you guys think that they are related? She would. They are. They both have the same issue, which is neural degeneration. Alzheimer's disease is a neurodegenerative disorder. You know this. So is autism. An autistic child at age 2 is smarter than they will be at age 32 if you don't intervene. Wherever it is they start with, they go and decline ongoing. Okay? One of the big keys to that is oxidative stress and inflammation. So targeting all those pieces is absolutely necessary. Very complicated issue. It's not one that you can just read and cure from a medical textbook or something like that. It really involves apprenticeship, learning, and didactics. Yes? No. No. Early intervention is still the key with autism. So we've got great facility to create a normal life anywhere between 0 and about 7 years of age. We've got great opportunity to create a decent life between 7 and 9, 7 and 10 years of age. 11 to 16 is kind of gray. We can really help affect behavior, but we're not too sure about our capacities to truly reverse the overall condition. Above age 16, it's pretty much just behavior. Okay, we can't do much about that, not through these methodologies. Okay, so there's a range, but if you have an autistic child or you know an autistic child younger than 7 years of age, get them to the right practitioner, they can have a normal life. And I mean, they can be joining you guys at Purdue at some day. Had one interesting, I gotta share this with you because it's a collegiate story. One young man, his mom and dad came to us, he'd been patients with us for a while, and he said, Dr. Mensah, I wanna share with you, we're very happy. Our son is going to college. And, you know, been with us for a while. I didn't remember exactly what was going on with the kid. I said, wonderful. That's wonderful. He said, Dr. Mensah, our son got a scholarship to college. I said, beautiful. That's wonderful. The father looked at me. He's from New Orleans. He said, Dr. Mensah, I know you don't remember. Our son was kicked out of 4 preschools. He was not accepted. Not only that, he was rejected from 4 different preschools. Now he's got a scholarship to college. I said, beautiful, I got it. He was on the autism spectrum. But then we heard something very interesting his sophomore year of college. He was a little bit Asperger-y at the time, done very well, a little bit Asperger's. If you know what Asperger's is, it's a condition where people don't have a whole lot of social sensitivity. So if somebody winks at somebody else in a romantic fashion, that person doesn't know what that means. They say, there's something wrong with your eye. Okay? That's kind of what Asperger's is. So he's a little bit Asperger at this point in time. And there was a young lady walking down the hallway of the dorm, and she's dressed in a miniskirt and kind of scantily dressed. And he walks up to her and says, you're dressed like a whore. And I said, oh my goodness, there's still a little bit of work to be done with this kid, okay? But he's in school. And then we found out he got a scholarship for his master's degree at another institution. So there's a lot that can be done. If you hear anyone tell you there is no treatment for autism, you're talking to the wrong people, okay? They just don't know about it. That's like somebody saying there's no such thing as a 1,000 horsepower Lamborghini or Ford Mustang or Camaro. There's no such thing as an electric Corvette. I'm sorry, I love cars, okay? There's no such thing as a C8 Corvette mid-engine. Yeah. You would say what to that person? Where have you been hiding, man? What rock have you been living under? It happens. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, folks. I want to thank this young man for bringing us here. We appreciate everything, Sigma Chi. Thank you, guys, for putting up with all my stories and so forth. They're all true, by the way. They're all true, except for the C8 Corvette thing. You know, I don't have one of those personally, but they exist. We know that. Thank you very much. You guys have a great evening. We have brochures. If any of you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call or email us.